people who attended their high school reunion. What was the biggest surprise? My 10-year reunion was held at a bar. It was all the same people at the bar as it was every weekend. But this time they were wearing nicer clothes. My 10-year reunion was last year and I refused to go because I knew it would be kind of like this. I live in a resort town, so there is a pretty drastic split in income levels of the people that live here. I knew half of the reunion would be the people that didn't achieve anything and half would be the people that had everything handed to them on a silver platter. Also, children and parents were invited, and that sounded like it would just make it more of a shit show. The biggest surprise anytime I catch up with people I grew up with is finding out their career. Most of us have pretty unremarkable jobs, but some that stood out. The guy who got arrested for underage drinking 3 times is now a cop. The girl who couldn't form a coherent sentence is now a teacher. The super genius is living in poverty because he decided to move to Costa Rica to save the rainforest. The bad kid joined the army, and now runs a small business, and is doing very well for himself. The golden child is now in prison for sexual assault. The weirdo became a DJ and does shows at nightclubs. The nerdy D&D kid now owns and operates an outdoor shooting range and is one of the largest ammunition suppliers in the area. I find the weirdo one least surprising. Many of the weirdos of high school tend to just be people who are interesting in a way that can't be appreciated by other teenagers. Some of them are just weirdos though. Back in high school, there was one girl who was extremely popular, extremely pretty, and seemed totally unapproachable from my vantage point. She was also really catty, embodying a lot of the mean girl stereotypes. Talking with her at the reunion, it turned out that she was very insecure and had a very tenuous home life for which she was compensating, and now she is extremely kind, full of gratitude, and just really down to earth. I love seeing that sort of change in people. That my friend was still alive, and he was equally surprised that I was. We got into Drew Gus together right after HS. We ended up being so ducked up that one night we robbed each other. He sold me a bag of actual grass and I gave him $1 instead of a 20, and we both ran in opposite directions and never spoke again. Friendship ended. No one even confronted the other. 10 years later at my HS reunion, I see him sitting in the corner. We were both sober and looking great. I walk over to him and first thing he says to me was, "OMG, I thought you'd be dead." And I said the same thing back to him. We talked the rest of the night. He didn't even remember why we stopped talking in the first place. Just that we were both in a very dark place when we parted ways, lol. Anyway, we both felt it best we leave the friendship there, and did not exchange numbers or anything, but I'm glad he's alive. The reunion itself. My wife was down in the states south of us for training and got into an accident. I went down and got things sorted with her, so she was good and went back to what she was doing, and I drove back north. It was a Friday and I was driving through my hometown and figured I would take my mother out to a restaurant we used to both really like going to. As we were eating, an old friend from high school walked through, waved and headed into the back. Then another, and another, and another. Just as I was about to get up and go see what was going on, an old girlfriend and later good friend walked in. Saw me and came up to talk for a bit. Then she asked if we should head back there, which confused me. Turns out I made it to the 10th year reunion for my class without knowing that I was at the 10th year reunion for my class. I finished my dinner with my mom, let her take my car home, I would catch a ride, and had a good night at the reunion. I didn't know what to expect. In high school in the late 1970s, a punk bully took my backpack and threw it out a third-story window. I hated that guy. He did random shitty things like that to a few others. At a recent reunion, he surprisingly showed up. I decided to talk to him. After a few beers, I brought up the backpack toss. He didn't remember it. We further talked. Turns out during that time in high school, his dad was dying of cancer, and he was struggling with his sexuality. He's gay. Through tears, he apologized to me for his erratic behavior in high school. After a couple more beers, he told me that his 30-year partner had also recently passed of cancer. Wow. I'm just glad I went to the reunion. I had been talking shit about that guy for decades. Now we are great friends. My wife and I hosted our 10-year in 2014. We arranged everything via Facebook, figuring it was the easiest way to reach people. We left the group open so people could add people who had been married and weren't easily searchable due to changing their name. Well, this person added themselves and started making trouble about everything. They literally had a complaint about every aspect of what my wife and I were planning. The issue was nobody had ever heard of this person. We looked in our yearbook and they weren't in it. We were getting messages from dozens of people about their behavior in the group and who the hell this person even was. So my wife asked. Apparently they got kicked out of their high school final semester of their senior year and came to our school for 3 months. When the reunion came around, they were the first to show up. Sat quietly in a corner and left early. I still have no idea who this person is. 20-year reunion. How many people seemed like they wanted to get to know me better in high school? When I was in high school, I felt like a total social pariah, and I would only approach people I thought were also at the bottom of the social food chain. It turns out, a lot of pretty cool people would have likely been my friends if I had given them a chance and been more open to it. Many people mentioned that they thought about being friends or better friends with me but weren't quite sure why it didn't happen. Also, at the reunion, I was much more extroverted and confident, and I realized a lot of the people I thought were popular snobs were very cool people. Back in high school, it's not like those folks were begging me to hang out and I said no. But I was definitely defensive because I didn't want to get rejected. This means that I might have missed out on having not only more friends, but better ones, because picking from the lowest rung of the ladder often meant I was dealing with people who had a lot of emotional problems. My 7th grade crush, the smartest girl in class, was still single, and when I asked her what she likes to do for fun in Chicago, she said, "Party!" We were 48 years old. I wonder if maybe she burned out early from being the smart one and the pressures behind then, and at a certain point went duck it and got into partying. I saw quite a lot of that. Last year was our 10th year reunion. I went there just for sheets and giggles, and, wow, where do I even begin? The biggest nerd in the whole year turned out into this huge egotistical douche bag. The school's most sociable girl became a nurse. The school gang of bad boys were 2 dead, 1 car crash / 1 drug overdose. 1 committed suicide. 1 worked as a tech store. 1 worked 2 jobs because he was paid child support to 3 women. Remember, kids, condoms are a good thing. 1 actually turned his life around and got a bachelor's degree in English and was a middle school English teacher, and the last one was working for his dad because he got kicked out of uni. My classmate, who many people thought was an asocial and stuck-up bitch, bloomed into a beautiful woman who's married with 2 kids. We had a long talk, and she said that she appeared asocial because our classmates were morons, true, and she had no intention to talk to them. Ooh, I have a good story. When we were in school, one of the popular, attractive girls had her birthday party at the cinema and invited me. I wasn't really a loser, just not popular, so I was pretty stoked to be invited. I think the movie was rated for adults, and me and the short kid weren't allowed in. I think my game face mustn't have been good enough, because I was average height for my age and younger looking. Shorter guys had gotten in. Me and the short kid sat in a different movie and then went home. To make matters worse, I completely embarrassed myself by buying the girl chocolates and bringing them wrapped to the movies. I did this partially because I thought she was pretty, and partly because that's what I was brought up to do. Nobody else bought her a present. So, not only did I look like an idiot giving her a present in front of everyone, I didn't even get into the movie. A few people asked where I was afterward and I couldn't lie. Word got around. I was so embarrassed. Anyway, a few days after this girl's birthday, in PE class, she came up to talk to me and thanked me again, and said she was still enjoying the chocolates. I brushed her off, because I was still super embarrassed and part of me thought I would gain some coolness points if I pretended it was no big deal. Or I didn't even remember. Or some such thing. Anyway, just before the reunion, we did a tour of our old school grounds. When this girl, now very much a woman, saw me, she came up heavily pregnant, and still a smoke show and gave me a huge, long hug. I don't think I spoke to her even during high school, let alone after. We didn't really talk much at the reunion. She gave birth a few days later. Since the reunion, I have wondered if she really was touched by my getting her a gift. And maybe something could have eventuated. Of course, she could have just been being polite. The weirdest part, though, was getting drunk with the two guys I'd started school with, and long since parted ways with. My husband and I graduated from high school together. This year will be our 20th reunion. We attended our 10th reunion 10 years ago, and it reminded me why I hated high school so much to begin with. LOL. First of all, the people in charge of planning it threw out the words professional networking opportunity 1,000 times before the event. If by networking, they meant everyone getting shit-faced and reverting back to 10-year-old high school drama, then they hit the nail on the head. I used to be on Facebook, and I would read these people's posts and think, wow, they have these perfect, amazing lives. The night of the reunion, after the liquor was flowing and people let their masks slip, I realized how phony their internet personas were and that some of them had some serious problems going on in life. That whole time, I had been being completely authentic on my social media like a sucker. The next morning, I deleted my accounts and never went back. I learned a valuable lesson that we are all going through the ups and downs of life. I just would prefer not to be inundated with everyone else's all the time and would like to keep my own to myself. I recently got an email for the 20th with a questionnaire about where it should be held. I tried to make the case for one of our local casinos. Because A, I like it there, B, my husband and I can book a hotel room and not worry about the drive home after, and most importantly, C, if I'm not feeling the vibe with my old classmates, I can go gamble or see a show or a number of other things. That the guy who pretty much terrorized half of the school, was highly aggressive and got into legal trouble multiple times, is now running a successful business. He also has 4 kids now, and apparently, one of the middle ones has a really big bullying problem at school, and he's part of a parent-run school club to fight against school bullies. More than 20 years have passed since then, and I don't have any bad feelings towards him anymore. But I also hate the fact that he acts so high and mighty about it now, while also being the worst offender when he was young. People change, and I'm the first one to forgive and forget. But it leaves a really bitter taste when you sit there and he talks for 2 hours straight about how to stop bullies. I mean, thanks for my childhood trauma that really damaged my self-esteem for the longest time. I guess? Happy you did so well for yourself. Ha! I went to my 30th reunion and chatted with this girl who I really had no idea who she was. But she was so enthusiastic and charming and lovely, and she seemed to know who I was. Anyway, now follow her on Facebook and Instagram, and she is living an awesome life. And I looked at my old yearbooks and we were in, I guess, clique adjacent. We had lots of friends in common but never spent time together. The richest kid is still the richest kid, but even more unfathomably rich. Like, wow, rich. One of our classmates actually became famous movies, TV shows, etc. Still super nice. I am always so excited to see him in the news. Also a bit jealous on some of his past Hollywood girlfriends. A girl who I knew, but wasn't that close, was a fireman all these years and was just about to get her MD degree. Like, wow. New doctor at like age 48-ish. So happy for her. The annoying classmates from elementary school were still very annoying. Grew up in a smallish town, so went from kindergarten through high school with lots of the same kids. Most people seemed to be doing fine. I guess otherwise they wouldn't have gone. Our 10th reunion was at a swanky downtown hotel with a sit-down meal, and our 30th was at like a civic hall conference room in our suburban hometown with a taco truck for food. So delicious. I was surprised at how little changed at my 15th. The cliques were still cliques. I recognized a few people, but it largely felt the same then as it did in high school. But at a bar, after standing around not really talking to anyone, I nope out somewhat early, and don't really have intentions to go into any more of those. I have plenty of friends today. But in high school I was sort of the cast-out kid. I hated going to the commons as I typically sat around by myself bored out of my mind. So my time was largely spent in the library or down in the music room writing and practicing. In hindsight, I should have made a better effort then to meet people. But I was incredibly shy. That reunion just served as a reminder of how miserable my time was in high school. A number of them were grandparents. Had kids right out of school, and then those kids had kids young as well. I just had my first baby at the time. A lot of people aged poorly. One guy was fat and bald. I had to read his name tag and then find his photo to try and connect the two versions of him. Couple of people dead, couple of people had done nothing with their lives. There was one guy looked like a drunken bum, had wandered in off the streets. Lots had been married and divorced. The hot girls were no longer hot. Most, if not all, of them were a lot overweight. Basically, I had the memory of how they were. And that's how I pictured them still. Was proven wrong. My wife and I had very different experiences in high school. She was a cheerleader but not popular, and just wanted friends. I was very popular but metalhead, long-haired, opinionated a-hole, and was very mean to a few groups of people, and I had no right being mean or cruel to them. She left high school, went to college, became a nurse, and happy. I went to college, but didn't really try, and I had a hard time adjusting to being a small fish in a big pond. I dropped out after a year and a half, and I think I finished 3 classes. At 20 years old, I didn't want to be who I was anymore. I moved across the country, reinvented myself, and tried to be a better person. That eventually led me to meeting my wife. Being a father, having a great career and a job I am really good at. When it came time to go to our respective reunions, we went to my wife's first, and she was amazed at how people didn't change, didn't grow up, etc. And I decided I didn't want to go to mine at all because I was uninterested in seeing friends of mine who didn't change or grow in any capacity. I realized there is a reason that year after year I stopped talking or really even knowing people from back home anymore. I did spend some time apologizing to those I was cruel to and not expecting anybody to get back to me or accepting my apologies. They were all receptive. And if that wasn't real or deep down, don't forgive me, I am okay with it. I just hope to raise my family to be better than I was. I guess that was more of a long-winded answer than I expected. In the end, my wife no longer cared that people she wanted to be friends with back then didn't want to be friends with her. And I no longer cared about trying to be cool or funny or opinionated.